that is Laura, and this is Kyle, and it's another episode of He Said, She Said. Laura, happy spring.
Thank you. Happy spring to you as
It is
well.
about bloody time.
I know. The subject is really interesting, and it's one that I think most of us can relate to, and that is the story of telling ourselves, or that we hear all the time, how much you should love yourself. Love yourself, and everything else will fall into place if we can just find that ability to love ourselves. And I guess the question is that just total bullshit, or is there some truth to that?
Is there a point where you've loved yourself enough?
Right. Yeah.
So I think that we take that statement, love yourself, and the rest will fall into place. And there's a number of different, little sayings that we hear, but the premise is the same, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think we take that and we kind of like to use it like a salve. We're single. We think we're really great. We've got things together, and we just haven't really found the right person. So, we say, well, if we just keep loving ourselves, things will fall into place. New age, speakers say that. It's got the whole new age love yourself movement and so forth. And I think that we take that a little bit out of context. We talk often, you and I have talked often over time that, we have to get right with ourselves.
Yeah.
Before we can get right with someone else.
Right.
And I really think that's implicitly that's what that statement is saying, right? Loving yourself, fine. I mean, if you hate yourself, if you hate who you are, if you hate the mistakes that you've made in life, I think that's a sign of we really haven't gotten right with ourselves, okay? It's not necessarily this whole lovey-dovey squishy thing about, love. It's really trying to understand something about ourselves. It's a little bit more pragmatic. When we hear the statement, well, if you just love yourself enough, everything will fall into place, I think that's a little bit more emotional. I think it's a little bit less emotional than that. Does that make sense?
The old adage that we have to we get married when we were 20. We barely had a life, right? Back in the day, I was married at 23. I didn't have much of a life before I got married. And so when I came out of my marriage, there was effort involved in kind of figuring out how to have fun, actually how to create fun for myself. And I think that when I work with women and they say that, and they always say the same thing. Yes, I do. I really do like myself. I'm doing well and I'm taking care of myself. I do. But they're also kind of bored in their own life. And I think that boredom thing can drive us to want a partner maybe before we're really naturally ready to. It's hard work to create. Believe it or not, it really is. It takes work to set yourself up in a life that you actually like.
Probably someone, male or female, but I think we can usually say male. Guys don't go walk around with their buddies at the gym and say, well, I really love myself. Guys don't do that, okay? Let's just cut that to the core right now. So this is likely a woman who probably is established in her career.
Mm-hmm.
She is self-sufficient. She is probably, quite attractive, or at least she's told that she's very attractive. So, when you take a look at it on the cultural menu, right, she is, she's at the top, right? She is, the cream of the crop, if you want to use that old analogy, or, she's got it all together. But yes, she's single. Right. And she's still single. And she really hasn't found the right person. She really hasn't found the individual, or maybe she did and it didn't work out, and maybe she's still latching on to that and she hasn't been able to find anyone since then. But she loves herself. And as long as she loves herself, then she's convinced that things were going to be okay and that she will eventually find that right person. I would almost make the argument, Laura, that that's a cop-out.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why, all right? I'm very skeptical of a man or woman who says, I just can't find a nice guy, or I just can't find a great girl. What a load of crap. Because I can tell you right now, if I was to ask each of those people individually, they would all say, I'm a great person. All right? I keep saying this, I've said this, and I'll say this until I can't say it anymore. When I talk to the man or woman who says, I just can't find the right person, I go out all the time, I just can't find anyone, the first thing that I have to go back to in response is, what is the one thing all of these different girls that you've gone out with or all these different guys that you've gone out with have in common? What's the one thing? It's you. You're the only thing that they have in common. So before we begin to look, away from the mirror, we have to ask ourselves, okay, I've gone out with 10 girls, and none of them has worked out. Is it truly all their fault? Am I just simply, I've got it all together and it's not about me, it's about them?
I guess I would ask someone who says that, why do you love yourself so much? What about you is so fantastic and lovable? Because I think that's kind of where the problem might be.
So you bring up a good point, and it was something that I was thinking about. It seems when I hear, I love myself, I'm loving myself, so things will eventually work out. It almost gives the impression that I've figured everything out on my end.
Right.
I've got it so together that I don't have anything else to work on. Right. So, if someone doesn't come into my field of vision as much together as I am, or as I think I am, well, that's just simply not going to work. Now, okay, before people start, writing me emails telling me what much of an ass I am, there is certainly a difference, right, between having the must-haves and the like-to-haves, right? And thinking that you have it all together. But relationships, Laura, are successful when there is a mutual humbleness between both of the partners. Now, we've never talked about this before, okay? There has to be humility. Mm-hmm. Women love confident men. They hate arrogant men.
Absolutely.
And there is a fine line between the two, all right? A confident man is one that says, he says, I know what I'm doing right, and I also know what I'm doing wrong, and I'm working to fix those things. The arrogant man says, I don't do anything wrong at all. I'm perfect, right?
Right.
It almost lends itself to that whole mentality, right? Well, as long as I love myself, everything will be okay. Well, what about the laundry list of things that you probably think you should be working on? Loving yourself is not going to keep you from drinking a bottle of Merlot every night, right? Loving yourself is not going to keep you, pull you knee deep out of your antidepressants every day. So I think that there has to be a dose of humility there, and I'm afraid that that's a very easy thing to hide behind instead of looking at what we should be working on, regardless of whether or not we're in a relationship. Regardless of those things, looking at what we should be focusing on within ourselves in order to become a better person, all right, instead of just saying and hiding behind, well, as long as I love myself, everything will be okay because I love myself because I have it all together.
So when I started dating Drew, and I knew that I wanted I wanted a new relationship, and I wanted one that would be sustainable, and I had done a lot of inner work, and I knew that I had to bring a different kind of game into the relationship. I knew that, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. But the one thing I did know, and I knew this because this is what I decided I wanted in someone else, is I felt it was my obligation to bring not just me healthy, a healthy me into a relationship, but I was always going to approach it as I'm going to just be the best version of me, living the best version of my life. Because additionally, I got to tell you, I expect him to bring his A game, both as a man and with his life. I don't want to be responsible for making him feel good about himself. I want to share that with him. I want him to feel good about him. And then I want to share that with him. And I want to support him and appreciate him and love him. But I don't want to be responsible for it. And I do think sometimes women more than men fall into this. Someone else is responsible for making me feel completely whole and happy. And it's not the way it works. It's just, it shouldn't work that way.
I know that it's very easy for you and I to sit here and talk about this when we've both been in relationships for 5+ years. Okay, I know it's very easy for us to sit here and preach to that. So I'm very sensitive to those individuals out there who are the ones that feel as if, that opportunity is never going to present itself, right? But I go back to what I said earlier, right? I mean, it's as if I date all these people, and I sit across the table and ask myself, is that really the guy, or is that really the girl, or is this what it's all about? Is that the best that they have to offer? It's really a sign of arrogance. I'm just going to say it. It's a sign of arrogance that, if you're going to turn someone away, then it needs to be based on qualities that we've talked about, right? Some sort of inherent qualities, the must-haves, right? But I'm not so certain, Laura, when someone sits down for a date for the very first time and they're mentally going over their checklist and checking this person on or off, that it's really based on those tangible must-haves. I think it's really more often than not based on superficial things that at the end of the day just really don't matter.
Yes, I've been in a long-term relationship, but let me tell you, when I left my marriage, the decision was I'd rather be alone than be in this. And there was and in my mind at the time, I felt there may not be. Maybe I won't, like most other people who end a marriage. Maybe I won't ever find someone else. And for those first few years, not months, but years, I was like, if I have to, and this is for another time, but I was like, if I have to just sexually satisfy myself while I'm figuring all of this out, I'll do it. But I had a lot of shit to figure out. I had to figure out, what would I do in my life if another relationship was not going to come? And that was where I focused my energy. It really was. It was on my kids, and it was on what I was going to devote my professional time to, and it was about taking care of myself. It was about inner work, outer work, all of it. God, it was exhausting. But I believe, I really do, that all of that work, all those years, and really humble. I hadn't thought about it, but I was humble. I knew that, I may not be all that, but I'm all that. And I just came to say, when and if it's going to happen and be ready to happen, it will. As long as I stay focused on me and doing that work.
My thought is this. When you find yourself saying, if I just love myself, everything will be okay and it'll all work out. Or, why can't I find someone, or looking at it from the standpoint of, why hasn't it come to me? Why hasn't it happened to me? I would encourage that person to think seriously about, how do you really see yourself? And how really do you see other people in relation to yourself? Okay? Because I'm convinced, through my years of experience, just knowing people and talking to people, and my own personal experience, that when you find yourself heading down that path, I think there's a sense of two things. One, I think there's a sense that, you know, I believe that there's this notion that I've got all of my things straightened out, right? I'm fine. The world now needs to kind of conform to what I'm looking for. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the second thing is it's really a sign of a little bit of arrogance that you feel that you've addressed all your issues. I've got my things. I'm in love with I love myself. Everything is fine. The world is what needs to fix it, and they need to, like I said, conform back to me. So I think in those two things, if you catch yourself going in that direction, you really need to pull up and really take a look at yourself a little bit more closely, because I think you'd shut yourself off from those other opportunities, right? You shut yourself off from those guys or girls that you've dated, the last 10 guys you've dated. Every one of them were bad? Every one of them? You got to ask yourself those questions.
And I would take, my final words are to take it a step further. And women are, you know, we're masterful at convincing ourselves of things, right? So convincing ourselves that, you know, I do love I'm doing great. Are you really? Are you really doing and loving your life in the way that you think, loving yourself and your life in the way that you're saying? Is that the big T? Is that the real truth? And taking that and saying, focus your energy less on waiting for or trying to attract the person who you think is going to just be grateful evermore that he found you. And instead, just figure out, what would you do? How do you want to spend your time? If you're not meeting the right person, then you're not putting yourself in the right environment and in the right experience to be able to do that. So it's time to shake things up a little bit. Nothing wrong with shaking things up. But to your point, when you say arrogance, it's like, we don't get to stand in one place and wait for the world to come to us. Sometimes you have to move the place you're standing in and be part of the solution. And I think, you know, my word is, find the big T, find the truth.
Great way to end it. Until next time, Laura, great conversation, interesting topic. Until next time.
Bye.